Hey everybody, I hope you had a good past couple of days. I was actually off the grid, and to be honest with you, I was eating too much. So I think that there has to be a certain lifestyle change coming up, but enough about that. Let's talk today about what happens. This is broadly speaking an issue of what happens if the outcome of the midterm 2018 elections is a takeover of the House by the Democrats, at least. Now, if they take over both the House and the Senate, I don't believe that I mean, it is a bit of a significant change. Of course, you would have Chuck Schumer as Senate Majority Leader, along with Nancy Pelosi or a different Democrat as Speaker of the House. Let's discuss, first of all, the issues with governance. You know, how it's going to be working, obviously, very differently. And then, more importantly, some of the other broader effects of that. You know, there's going to be kind of a ripple effect throughout, not just politics, but throughout, the media as well as culture. So let's get started. Now, those of you that don't know, Nancy Pelosi is old as fuck. And I think that if she were to be reelected as Speaker this time, it would quickly become very obvious that the job isn't really, she's kind of way past her prime. And it's been said by a lot of people, including Jimmy Dore, people on the left, that Nancy Pelosi's real value to the Democrats has been her ability to raise money for candidates in political races. So I think that once she gets the Speaker's gavel back, if she was to win this election, win this House election, I think that her inadequacies would quickly become very obvious for people who are closer observers on the Democratic side. And then there would be kind of this dust up over who would be the successor, and it might be that this isn't as big of an issue as I'm making it, and I'll explain why. You guys, of course, probably remember that the seat that Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez is all but inevitably going to win in New York. I think it's the 13th or the 14th district of New York. That district, it's been occupied, and it's still occupied now by Joe Crowley, who was pegged by some people to be Nancy Pelosi's successor eventually. Now, that means that the Democrats are planning for a future after Nancy Pelosi, when, obviously they're going to have to wheel her out, her with her plastic face and her, her shivering voice, and forgetting that George Bush isn't president anymore. So that presents a slight problem, but there are plenty of establishment Democrats already in the House that would probably be very easy candidates to become Speaker. First of all, you have their leadership. You have Steny Hoyer, I think from Maryland, would probably be the next person. Let's see if we can get a photo of him. So Steny Hoyer is another dirty Democratic politician. So I think he's the House Minority Whip. I think that would be his title. I'm not quite sure. Yeah. So he is or was the House Minority Whip, and this guy is pretty much he's a dirty Democrat, about as dirty as most of the other establishment Democrats. And for him to become Speaker would really be pissing off a lot of the Democratic base. Then you have other people who might try. I don't know if they really have a chance. Whoops, there's a wrong one. So, Tim Ryan. This guy is from Youngstown, Ohio, and his district might not exactly be easy to keep in this election, given that Youngstown is, and I actually work not very far from Youngstown, but Youngstown is kind of trending towards the pro-Trump part of the spectrum, and he's been in the House for not very long, and he's already run for Speaker of the House within the Democratic caucus. That's how you do it. You're basically you're elected to Congress. You usually have to wait a while, and then you basically raise your hand and say, "Hey, what the fuck about me?" And that's basically what he's been doing. He's trying to get he's trying to get elected Speaker of the House. I don't think he's going to be able to do it. And you know, some people were thinking he would be Hillary's vice presidential candidate. Now, this is something I didn't know. Ryan previously had a reputation as one of the more pro-life or anti-abortion Democrats. In January 2015, Ryan announced his views were shifting in favor of a more pro-choice stance. In his statement, Ryan wrote that he had heard stories from several women who had gotten pregnant under varying circumstances and had wanted to get an abortion. So, that could make him more palatable as Speaker of the House, because I don't think he's really going to be a success nationally, just because, the Democratic Party, I'll be honest with you, in this state, it's very hard to really climb the ladder when all the fucking rungs are broken. In the state of Ohio, the Democratic Party is basically a disaster. They're lucky they have one statewide official, Sherrod Brown, who will probably be reelected. Unfortunately, he's a useless piece of crap. But we're talking again, this is what happens when the Democrats, if the Democrats win the House, which is a distinct possibility, and I've said it before that it's probably the contingency that Donald Trump, if he wants to keep his agenda going, he has to really, really fight to win House seats that are vulnerable on the Democratic side. The best defense is a good offense. So if he fails, and they do take over, this is what's probably going to happen. So Nancy Pelosi, again, so Steny Hoyer would probably be the top candidate to succeed her. Then you get into some of these other establishment gargoyles like Gerald Nadler, or I want to float this out there. What about Debbie Wasserman Schultz? I don't think that she would be Speaker of the House. Okay, let's be clear about that. If she were to become Speaker of the House, it would be the biggest fuck you to the Democratic progressives that there are. And it would probably ignite some sort of massive civil war within the Democratic Party. And I think most progressive Democrats have not let well enough alone from 2016, because honestly, she has received the only thing that she suffered from what she did to the Sanders supporters during that primary was to lose her chairmanship of the DNC, which she sucked at anyway. So, she's basically been given every single courtesy, and I think that we're really talking about somebody who encompasses the concentrated form of corruption within that party, Debbie Wasserman Schultz. Now, why am I bringing her up if I don't think that she's going to be Speaker of the House? If she's not Speaker of the House, there could be a possibility of her being a committee leader. Okay, from 2015 through 2016, she was the ranking member of the House Appropriations Committee. Okay, so now that the Democrats would have the House back, there's no reason they couldn't bring her back. She's still on the Appropriations Committee and on the Budget Committee, so she could be appointed head of either of those committees. And I think progressives would really, they should cringe at that. That's really a nightmare scenario for them. I think there's reasons for people of varying political persuasions not to want a Democratic takeover. Obviously, progressives probably don't want to see the Republicans keep the House. There's no reason for me to tell them, oh, it'll be great if what's his name, Steve Scalise becomes Speaker of the House. I'm not trying to sell them some sort of pipe dream like that. And by the way, I'm telling you, I can tell you in every video, it's not my responsibility to tell you how to vote. I mean, you can obviously make your own decisions and everything. So that's the picture of the political picture. That's a political picture in terms of what happens if they win the House. A little more broadly than that, yes, there's going to be gridlock. You're going to see a lot of clashing between whoever the Speaker of the House is. Let's say it's Pelosi, for argument's sake, and Donald Trump, and probably if Mitch McConnell retains the Senate. Yeah, that's going to be a lot of friction. If, let's say, Chuck Schumer becomes Senate Majority Leader, then you have Trump fighting both houses of Congress. So you have day in and day out, you just have a load of bullshit, probably worse than it is now between Trump and both houses of Congress. Now, why is that? Why is it I believe some Republicans are like, well, it's not such a bad thing? Well, to be honest with you, I've heard a lot of people are saying, the Republican Party has basically castrated itself. It's cut its own balls off. They never really pursued to the end the repeal of Obamacare. And I'm personally, that for me was the biggest betrayal of the past 2 years. And it can't continue. And that's why for me, the Republican Party doesn't really mean anything until they actually fulfill their message. That's why those people who voted against repealing Obamacare, I think they don't belong in the U.S. Senate. The people who claim to be Republicans, they don't belong there. They don't. They don't belong there at all. They belong in a different country. You make a commitment to something that got you elected, and then you throw that in the trash once you get in. You don't belong there. They're basically the Debbie Wasserman Schultz's of the Republican Party. Her commitment, by the way, has nothing to do with policy. The centrist wings of both parties essentially have the same behavior patterns. They might have a couple policies on one side that the other side claims are basically unacceptable. But if you look at their actual behavior, at the way that they relate to politics in general and how they present themselves to the public, they are the same thing. It does not matter whether it's Lisa Murkowski or Debbie Wasserman Schultz or Marco Rubio. In many cases, these people, they just behave the same way, and they just never learn. And they still continue to think that the American people are marching lockstep with the headlines on the Washington Post. That's the way that they look at politics. Now let's segue there. That was a good way to leave the political sphere, so to speak, and go to the media political sphere. What happens to the media in the wake of this? Well, you're going to see a lot of hysteria building up, a lot of hyping up of the 2020 presidential primaries with the Democrats. You're going to see some impeachment talk as well for at least the first 4 or 5 months the Democrats control the House, if not longer. You're going to see people talking about like all these sorts of bizarre amendments to protect Robert Mueller and more bullshit investigating Russia and other sorts of very intense attempts by the Democrats in the House or also the Senate, because we have to leave open this I believe is a very outside prospect that the Democrats control the Senate after these elections, but you still have to throw it in there. There will be more and more attempts by these parties to actually remove Trump from office before completing his term. And I don't know how serious they can get. There's going to be a real problem in terms of getting 2/3 of the Senate to vote for removing him from office. And I think that if the Democrats, this is a danger in the political sphere, okay? Sorry that we didn't get to we're not in the media yet, but I think we have to continue and make this clear. If the Democrats continue to focus exclusively on attacking Trump as president, that could actually erode a lot of their support among people who said, well, we wanted to elect you in order to create changes that we thought would make, that would reverse certain issues we had with Donald Trump. Instead, you're really just attacking him, but you're not for example, a lot of the anti-war Democrats will say, well, how come you didn't, vote down the authorization of use of military force, the AUMF? How come you didn't do that? How come you continue to vote in favor of some of these arms deals that the United States does? Those types of things will cause friction if they do happen within the Democratic Party. They are not going to, these wings of the Democratic Party are going to get really, really antsy about seeing how, in reality, Pelosi or Schumer, if they become the majority leader or the Speaker of the House, they're actually just court jesters essentially, and they do whatever the lobbyists tell them to do. And these people knew it, and they're going to have nobody to blame but themselves. So I'll say this, and I don't want to make this construe this to be that I'm telling you how to vote. I'm just saying be aware. If you are voting the Democrats into the majorities of either the House or the Senate, just be aware you're actually voting in their lobbyists as well. Just like, let's be honest, you're voting for the oil lobby if you're voting for a lot of these Republican lawmakers. It's not, it should be something that we're all mature enough to understand that these parties are too corrupt to actually believe we're voting for people with integrity. I'm upfront about it. I am very skeptical that if the guy running for Senate here as a Republican, Jim Renacci, I wouldn't say I'm crazy about him, and that's why I'm not too confident he's going to win, because I don't think he's the type of person who has the, he's really going to change anything anyway. So I'm not going to sugarcoat it, and I'm not going to, spray fucking, spray whipped cream on top of a turd and tell you that's fondue or something. Tell you that's dessert. That's not the way that I really relate to this. Now let's get back to the media. Okay, the media has been through this maelstrom for the past 2 years. You've had entire networks going through these massive upheavals with NBC News and Matt Lauer, and then you have Les Moonves over at CBS and Fox News with Roger Ailes and Bill O'Reilly, all these major changes. And the reality is that you're going to see these networks kind of competing just like they did in the prior election cycle, 2016, over how to whore their coverage of these candidates more. And it's going to become kind of it's going to be a circus. Okay, it is going to be, I don't know why Windows Defender's popping up. It's going to be kind of a joke for people watching it. They're all going to say that they're going to have the inside track on this person's campaign. Let's say, the first month of, by 2019, by the way, we're going into 2019 already. In 2019, you're going to have a couple people who will be called, oh, these are the new, top prospects for, the Democratic nomination, whether it's, just this week they were talking about friggin' Michael Bloomberg. So let's say, Michael Bloomberg, Mark Cuban, Elizabeth Warren, you'd have Cory Booker, you'd have Kamala Harris, you have all these people who are basically, whoring themselves out for the media, and the media will all try to portray themselves as having the closest possible footprint within those campaigns. And at a certain point, people are going to get tired. They're going to recognize it for what it is, which is that it's a glorified reality show. They're basically, they're offering free advertising for people who are, in all honesty, not very interesting. Michael Bloomberg is not a very interesting person. And by the way, him having the Bloomberg network, which has websites and TV networks and everything, is an advantage over some of the other candidates. So, Michael Bloomberg, you have Mark Cuban, you have let's say you have some of these other people that might be running. Let's throw some names. I mean, Bernie Sanders, for example. So people are going to obsess over each of these candidates, and you're going to see kind of this. Hillary Clinton might also run, by the way. Let's not throw that out of the equation. So you're going to see a lot of competition between these people over how to appear more interesting, how to appear to be less of a piece of shit than they actually are. Okay, and that's really going to be the problem with the Democrats going into 2020. How can and this is leaving open the door for any outcome. I don't want to talk about 2020, whether it's going to be Trump winning or whether it's going to be somebody else winning, because we don't know who's going to be on the stage anyway. So fuck predicting that. The ultimate challenge will be somebody being able to make it through the primaries without basically selling their soul. And I don't think it's going to happen. The person who emerges from the Democratic primaries will basically be some sort of corporate chameleon. If it is a progressive, I think that that person will be forced, basically, intimidated into accepting all sorts of perks from the corporate leadership of the party. And yes, that includes Bernie Sanders. I don't think that he's immune to that. And as for the alternative media on the left, because the alternative media on the right will continue to fight against censorship issues. They'll continue to be embattled by censorship issues and being banned from all sorts of these websites and social media networks. The alternative media on the left will go through, and this goes for both this scenario and the scenario where the Democrats lose both houses. There will be some sort of kind of civil war within the alternative media left, okay? Because there will be some people who say to the progressives, screw you guys. You're not actually helping the cause of advancing and getting a candidate that will defeat Donald Trump. We need you to go with the program. So they'll tell them, you're not welcome. And this will come in all sorts of forms, and it's already manifested itself and continues to manifest itself day in, day out. There will be progressive people who act as sheepherders, like Chris Hayes on MSNBC, or you have Sam Cedar. By the way, there's a clip I saw of Sam Cedar that I think I might examine this week sometime, where those people will say, stop ruining the program. All we have to do is we get back in the majority, and things are comparatively better from when the Republicans are in control. These are the people who are like, well, there's no need to actually reform the party relative to getting into power. They don't understand. Look at how difficult it is for the Republicans to reform in their own way when they're in power. Look at how difficult it is. Do you think Republican voters wake up and think, oh, I think Mitch McConnell is doing a fantastic job? No, they love him gone today. They love him gone yesterday. Okay, Mitch McConnell has been kind of the bane of conservatives' existence probably for 7 or 8 years now. Okay, before he was Senate Majority Leader. So they can only, it's what I just said about the Republicans is much worse on the Democratic side. You don't see the degree of turnover among the Democrats going into this year's election as you had with the Republicans going into 2010. You don't see this massive wave of new faces like happened with the Tea Party back then. It's just, I mean, there are a number of them. I'm not saying that there's nobody there. There is Ocasio-Cortez. There is of course, I think the guy's name is James Thompson in Kansas, who I believe is not going to win, but he's still worthy of mentioning. You still have people like Andrew Gillum at the state level over in Florida. But I believe that this is a mirage, that the Democrats ultimately, when they get into power, they will, in reality, show to progressives and, by the way, to average voters who don't really affiliate either, they're kind of casual people. They will realize, well, we actually voted for something that doesn't change anything. We actually voted against reform. We actually voted to keep the Democratic Party as it is, and therefore to keep politics the way it always was. And that's going to be what the so-called alternative left media has to grapple with. A lot of these journals, Vox, TYT, which is more video, Huffington Post, Daily Kos, all of them will have to grapple with the fact that now they have somebody in the majority, and if it continues to be Nancy Pelosi as speaker, or one of her, gargoyle stand-ins like Steny Hoyer, then really they haven't voted for change. It's the same party it was in 2006 when Pelosi was elected Speaker of the House the first time. And they failed to change anything substantive at the time for progressives either. They didn't get Medicare for all when Barack Obama was elected and they had both houses of Congress. It was just a complete charade. So yeah, you're gonna see some bloodletting. You're gonna see some of these hardcore progressives that object to this being let go from these networks. And this has already been begun, by the way. It's not as if this is something that hasn't happened yet. Some of these people, Michael Tracy, who I think is a pretty good reporter, with all due respect, even though he's a progressive, I disagree with him politically. I think he does a darn good job from the videos that I've seen of his. He's no longer welcome on TYT. He's gone. You have a number of these other people just, gone, because they need people that are able to basically keep the program going in the way that they want it to. So please let me know what your thoughts are. If you think that there's something I left out, I'm sorry I couldn't cover everything, but yes, any suggestions, any disagreements, put in the comments. Please like the video, share the video. Subscribe to the channel. Subscribe to the other channel, Razor Ray Live Wounds. Might be a live stream tomorrow. I'm not sure yet. Or rather tonight, being Wednesday. And that's about it. So take it easy and have a great Wednesday.